Hey there, Mark. How are you doing? How are you doing? I know since you are Mark
Hey
the
there, Mark. How are
Traveler.
you doing?
Hold on one second.
How are
I know that since you are Mark the Traveler, this is probably going to be something really interesting for you that I know that you would be interested in, being that you go near and far. This is such a wonderful, tremendous finding, something that's going to go down in history for the descendants of Mobile, Alabama. Hey, Miss Mom G3, I just want to read something real quick to you guys. Just bear with me. Just listen to this story, you guys, and then we'll get started with my review. But just listen to this story. Lorna Gale Woods had heard stories of the Clotilda since before she could speak. In the evenings, her grandmother would hold her on the porch and tell her the tale of how her great great grandfather came to Alabama on the last known slave ship to come to the United States. They were brought by force, her grandmother would tell her, by an American businessman who just wanted to win a bet. Her great great grandfather, Charlie Lewis, was one of the oldest of 110 slaves bought in West Africa, chained in the hull of the Clotilda, and sailed across the Atlantic to the Mobile Tensas River Delta in Alabama in 1860. But after the slaves were unloaded, the crew burned the ship and its wreckage was never found. So many people doubted the story. My grandmother would tell us the story so we wouldn't forget and so that we would continue to tell the story. Miss Woods, 69, said over the phone in a warm southern cadence. On Monday, the story that Miss Wood's family and many like hers in Africatown, Alabama, the historic neighborhood of about 2,000 on the shores of the Delta just north of Mobile, had passed down for more than 150 years, became much more real. On that day, Ben Raines, a reporter of OWL.com, published an article in which he told of discovering the charred wooden remains of a boat believed to be the Clotilda. A team of archaeologists who visited the site said that based on the dimensions of the wreckage and its contents, included charred timber, iron drifts, the remnants were most likely those of the slave ship. This is the proof that we needed, Ms. Woods said. I am elated because so many people said that it didn't really happen that way, that we made the story up. Ms. Woods and other descendants said they were ecstatic about the news, but still coming to terms with it. While the Clotilda had always been at the center of family lore, the common bond among neighbors in Africatown, they previously had to accept the story on faith. About 10 of the 100 or so descendants of the Clotilda slaves who still live in Africatown gathered on Wednesday to discuss what should be done with the wreckage if it proves to be the Clotilda. Should it be removed and restored? Should it stay where it is and the land be protected? Or should the wreckage be placed in a museum? What do you guys think? If y'all have been watching the news, y'all saw this breaking news come across like yesterday and today. And it's like for these people in Alabama who are like the last, I mean, their ship was like the last ship that sailed across the seas, bringing slaves to America, right there in Alabama. So, what do you guys think? I want to hear what you guys think. Do y'all think that they should preserve that area and protect it? Or do y'all think that they should remove it and put it in a museum? I have been really thinking about that because if you saw the wreckage on the shores, on the beach, near the waters, you could tell it's very, very, very fragile. It's very fragile. So I was thinking, like, if they tried to remove um the remnants, the wreckage of that ship, would they do more harm to it? You know, because I mean, it's been like underwater for a very, very long time. You think so, Mark? I really was thinking about that. Like, in moving it, I would just think that it might get more damaged. But I don't know. So, the people down there in Alabama, they're trying to, decide or, figure out, what should be done with it. And I do believe that they should have a lot of say so. Even though they didn't own the ship, it's not like it was their property, but it's their history. It's their history. Me personally, I believe that they should try to preserve it unless they're very, very, very sure that they can transport it without causing more damage. If they are not sure that they can transport it without causing more damage, I think they should just give like each of the maybe the heads of each family should get like a piece of the wreckage. Whether it's a small piece of wood or something, and they could keep it like encased in glass or something like that with maybe a quote or a story of the Clotilda and the history, because all this time they said they've been telling the story throughout their generations, and a lot of people didn't believe it, a lot of people didn't. And it's like it's so important. This story is kind of important to me because a lot of us, a lot of black people, including other races as well, but in dealing with this subject, a lot of black people, a lot of Africans were brought to the United States, and a lot of us do not have nothing that proves when we got here, the exact time we got here, the exact year, who the youngest child was that came, who was the oldest adult that came, stuff like that. Because being this was the last ship, the oldest surviving person who survived on that ship, his name is Cujo Lewis. Cujo Lewis. And let me show you guys a picture of him real quick. Okay, here he is. I say keep it there, but send a part of remains to the National Museum of African American History and Culture here in D.C. for many to enjoy. I agree with that too. That is a very, very, very good idea. That is a very good idea, Miss Mom G. Here's a picture of Kazula, aka Cujo Lewis, one of the original survivors of the last slaves shipped from Africa to America and sold into chattel slavery. He died in 1935. 1935. So just think, he died in 1935. The people who live in that area, like after slavery was abolished, it was some years. It was some years before they totally stopped, bringing slaves here from Africa, because some people just didn't abide by the law, and so they were doing it illegally. And a lot of the ships, they had got stopped by the authority and people were arrested. So a lot of them who were doing it illegally after it had got totally abolished, a lot of them had gotten arrested. And then the slaves that were, that brought over here were freed. But in this situation, the guy who brought these slaves over here on that last ship called the Clotilda, after he got them here, he smuggled them in the middle of the night. So he waited out in the waters till nighttime, brought the slaves on shore, and hurried up and got them dispersed so they could do it secretly, because again, slavery had already been abolished. And then some years later, when it totally got abolished in that area, per law, because these people were found to still have slaves down there. So once they totally freed all of the slaves, they didn't have no way back to Africa. They didn't have no way back to Africa, like most slaves. They didn't have no way back. So they stayed, and they stayed in Alabama, and they made a home there in Alabama. And the name of the town was Africa Town. Now, Africa Town, right now, like just a few months back, they had did a story on that place because they've been searching vigorously for the remains of this ship. They had found something a while ago, and they thought that it might be part of the Clotilda, and so they vigorously searched for the other remnants, the remains, the wreckage, of the ship, and they found a lot of it just recently. But Africa Town, they had did a story on them like a few months ago, like in January. And the reason why they did the story on them was because Africa Town, Alabama has fallen on very hard times. But the residents, they're trying to find hope, in their heritage. And this story came out before they were sure that this was the Clotilda. Yes, I love the name too, Map Shine. Thanks for tuning in. I just love that. When I came across the story, I was like, Africa Town. I like that. I have never heard of Africa Town. I've never been to Alabama. The furthest I've been down south, well, let me put it this way. The only places I've been down south, I've been to Texas. I've been to Memphis. I've been to Mississippi. I've been to Florida. Fort Lauderdale and Miami, down that way. But other than that, I've been to Oklahoma, and that's like the only southern, states that I've been to. I drove through states, but as far as like vacations or whatnot, them the only southern states that I went to. So this little town, is in Alabama, and more than 200 people had came together for the first gathering of the descendants of the Clotilda, the last slave ship to bring African captives to U.S. shores in July of 1860. So they gathered together, a few months back, for their first gathering of all the descendants of the Clotilda, because remember, it was 110 of them. So from 1860 to now, that's a lot of descendants. From 110 people, that's a lot of descendants. A lot of them were taken away from their homes in Africa. Cujo Lewis, he had told a story. He had been interviewed years before he died. He died in 1935, the oldest survivor of that ship. He died in 1935, but before he died, he had been interviewed by Zora Neale Hurston. And a lot of you guys know who she is. Zora Neale Hurston was an influential author of African American literature and an anthropologist who portrayed racial struggles in the early 20th century American South and published research on Haitian voodoo. So she had did an interview on him. And he had told her the story, the story of how they got here, how, his mother was left back in Africa, how when they got here, they just cried and cried and cried. He said they didn't know what to do. They just cried. That's all they did. For a very long time, they cried and cried and cried, and they would get in trouble every time, they would cry. But eventually, they adapted. They ended up learning the English language. But after slavery, after all of them was totally free, they was abolished. Slavery was abolished, but then, some people were still in bondage. After they were totally free, what happened was they still was using like their African language, for some time, but eventually, as the generations, grew, children came, grew up and whatnot, they ended up speaking the English language, of course. But Cujo, he was born in 1840 with the name Kasala in the Bantay region of West Africa that is today encompassed by the nation of Benin. He grew up in Yoruba community in a large family of 17 siblings. In the spring of 1860, Cujo Lewis' peaceful life was interrupted when he was abducted by the army of the African kingdom of Dahomey and sold by them at the slaving port of Oida. By this time, The excuse me, the importation of slaves had been illegal by that time in 1860. Again, importation of slaves had been illegal in the United States for almost 60 years. Almost 60 years. They were still bringing slaves over here for 60 years. And the British and American ships had already set up a blockade around West Africa to prevent slaves from being shipped from the continent. But somehow, slave traders still attempted, to illegally bring slaves to the United States, and they were able to do that. Because they were still out for that profit, still out for that money, that greed. At that time, slave traders who had been charged with piracy were acquitted by a jury in Georgia, leading many to believe they could smuggle slaves into the U.S. without any consequences. So that is how he ended up here, and the other 109 slaves. He was sold to Captain William Foster of the Clotilda, who illegally smuggled him. And actually, it was 115 more African men and women to Mobile, Alabama, where they were sold to businessman Timothy Meher. I think that's how it's pronounced, Meher. So the Clotilda was the last known ship to have brought slaves from Africa to the United States. This is like this. Man, this is going to go down for the people in like this city of Africatown. It's a really, they're concerned about this city, and that's why they did a story on it, a couple of months ago. They're concerned about this city because of the fact it used to be like 2,000 people living there, and now it's like only like 200 people living there. The people who are still there, they're trying to survive. It's a lot of impoverished families down there, in Africatown. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe with this discovery, with this find of the wreckage from the last slave ship, that maybe it would bring something to this location. You know what I mean? Like, maybe, I don't know, a museum, or, a tourist, right, Miss Mom G, like a tourist attraction, or, something like that. Because it's really sad when you think about it. Like, it seems like this location in Africatown has just been, just forgotten. It just seems like they've been forgotten. And matter of fact, let me read a little bit more on this. Okay, here we go. One moment, I got my screens mixed up. Okay, here we go. As far as this place in Africatown, they said this little community was self-sustaining, said Darren Patterson, and I'm reading from National Geographic. And they were self-sustaining, says Darren Patterson, a descendant of founder Polly Allen. Patterson attended the training school in the 1960s before moving to Detroit to work as a sports writer. He has said we had everything they needed right there. The schools down there taught them to be viable men and women. And they said they had it going on. The folks down there really had it going on. But now the community is really like poor, impoverished. The housing down there, the homes are run down. Back in the heyday, they said in the 1960s, it had like, they said at the most, it had like 12,000 people living there. But then it fell down to like 2,000. It once boasted of several stores, gas stations, barber shops, but now they said heavy industries surround the community, while many houses are unoccupied or in severe disrepair. So again, I'm hoping that maybe it'll bring something to the community, like Miss Mom G said, maybe a tourist attraction, or because me personally, I would love to see that. Just looking at the pictures on the internet and looking at it on the news and seeing the ship, like seeing it, in the dirt, in the sand, seeing the outline of it, I'm just like in awe, because not just because it was the last ship, You know what I'm saying? But again, back to what I was saying earlier about families who are descendants from Africa who were slaves, it's not many of us who have something from back then, something handed down to our family, something to prove where we really come from. A lot of people, we have no idea where we really came from. You know, where we really came from. Like the name of the tribe, or, you know, the name of our great, 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 greats. A lot of us don't have that information. And it's usually because there's no proof of it. There's no proof of it. So I'm glad that these people of Alabama and Africantown, Alabama, this is where the descendants, most of the descendants still live. They still live there. A lot of them still live there in Africantown, you know, Alabama. You said, and the man in the picture sure looks like Ghanaian. Especially like one from Cape Coast, formerly known as Gold Coast in West Africa. You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And you can just tell from the, you know, like the structure in his face. You can just tell, You said, I know where I came from, at least on my mama's side. See, on my father's side, I really need to do some research on my father's side. Because on my mother's side, I know a lot of information. But when it comes to like the exact location we came from, I don't know. And I guess I should have probably done it a long time ago. I mean, have you ever tried one of those genealogy, what's the name of that, where you could actually pay them to locate or dig up information, or, you know, your history, your background, find out what percentage of black you are, what percentage of this, or what percentage of that. I've always wanted to do that, but have yet to do it. But I do, you know, have friends who've done it before. So I think I'm going to do that. I really do think I want to do that, because it's good to know. And it's good to know. It's good for history. It's good for your generations to come, for your children, for your children's children, you know, to have something more knowledge, you know, because as the years go by, like how they say, remember how when you were in school and you would do like the telephone game, and they would be like, you whisper in somebody's ear a story, then that person whispers it, then that person whispers it, and about time it goes all the way around, the story is just all mixed up. Like all mixed up. And the person who started it is like, that is not what I said. So it's the same thing. Like each generation, we lose some information, you know, on our ancestors, on our descendants. We lose some information. And so to have something in writing or have something in paper, like if you can look at the picture on the screen right here, you can see like in the indentation, like in the water, like in the mud there in the beach of the ship. You can see that. And then if you notice, the ship was not humongous. Like what they did back then, they used to pile hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slaves in the bottom of the ship. They would be piled on top of each other. I mean, using the bathroom on each other, getting sick and vomiting on each other. It's amazing. It's amazing how so many people survive those long trips over the transatlantic. It's amazing, you know, how long some people survive. You said, but I take that back. I am 39% black. Okay, Mark, you said I am 47% German and black. Mom G said, my dad's family has done a good job tracing our history, not so much on my mom's side. I am first German generation. My mom is from Germany originally. Oh, wow. That's cool. And you said, but I take that back. I am 39%. Okay, 39% black. See, I'm just going to assume that I'm like 99.9999 black. I do. I'm just joking, y'all. I have no idea what percentage of black I am, but it's high. I mean, obviously it's high. But I do know that we have some white in our family. I do know we have some Indian in our family. But other than that, like German or French or, you know, anything like that, I have no idea. So again, I think it's called ancestors.com. Yeah, I think that's what it's called, ancestors.com. I am going to check into that and find out. And you know what's so funny? Just, I swear, like a week ago, my son, the youngest one, the one who just graduated from high school last week, we was talking about, I don't even know how we got on the subject, but we was talking about ancestors, and stuff like that. And he had told me that he had went onto ancestors.com. And I'm looking at him, and you did what? And he's like, well, I was about to order my history. And I said, what? You was about to do this without asking me, without, he didn't bring it to my attention at all. And I said, so what stopped you? He said, because they asked for a credit card. I just started busting out laughing. I just bust out laughing like, oh, okay. Well, next time you consider ordering something online, you might want to discuss it with your mother or your father first. But yeah, I am going to go ahead and do that. I am. And I'm going to, I have a pretty good relationship with, some of the people on my father's side. My mother, she passed about 3 years ago. Matter of fact, 3 years ago yesterday, she passed. 3 years ago yesterday, May 23rd, my mother went on to glory, went on to heaven. Hey, Roxanne, how you doing, sweets? So, on my father's side, I'm pretty cool with a lot of my aunties and cousins, grandma, stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's going to be my goal this year. My goal this year is to find out exactly where I originated. I know I originated here in Omaha, Nebraska, but you know what I mean. Like my history, my ancestors, my greats. I'm going to find that out because, again, we're not losing any time here. As we get older day by day, time flies by, and eventually a lot of the people who have most of the knowledge from back in the day, from the history of their ancestors, they're going to be passed on. And then it's going to be up to our children and their children's children, to carry on, especially if there's any kind of traditions. So, yeah. Hey, Roxanne. I'm just doing this early live. I saw this breaking news yesterday, and this morning I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk about this today. I have to talk about this today. I'm gonna go live again later because there's another trending topic that we're going to discuss later, and it's another very important topic. So everybody who is not subscribed to my channel, please take the time to click subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you can receive all my notifications when I go live or when I upload a video or upload some content. So thank you very kindly. And don't forget to like. Make sure, thumbs up the video, y'all. You gotta give me a thumbs up on the video, y'all. Thank you so much. But yes, thanks for everybody tuning in for this breaking news, for this history that was made recently, that was discovered. Again, I know I had asked you guys, what do you think they should do to the remnants, to the wreckage that was recently found? And some of you guys said, you think that maybe they should leave it there. Some people said they should leave it there. Some people said that maybe they should try to take it, try to, dig it all up, maybe try to restore it, put it in a museum or put it in some kind of, like a, visitor. I think that was Mom G, who's had like a tourist attraction or something like that. I really think they should do a tourist attraction just because of what I learned about the city Africatown and how the people down there, a lot of them are living in severe poverty. A lot of the homes are in terrible despair. It used to be like 12,000 people living there in 1960. 12,000. It used to be 12,000 living there. Where the descendants, where they lived, that was their own little town. After, slavery was abolished, 60 years later, they were still, shipping slaves to America. By the time they finally got, set free, like truly set free, they decided to stay in that area. They named it Africa Town. And in 1960, about 12,000 people lived there. Now it's down to 2,000. So I really think this could be great for their community. Like, really, really great for their community. So we'll keep our eye on it, though. As soon as I find out something about what they plan to do with the wreckage, I'll let you guys know. You said like 6, my beautiful friend. God bless. Hey, Dan Anderson, how are you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you guys thumbs up the video. Give me a like, you guys. And again, make sure you got my notification bell hit, because I'm going to go live again tonight with another important trending news topic. So tune in. It's going to be like probably in a few hours. So, but as usual, Primetime Squad, in the meantime and in between time, y'all know how we do. Stay safe, be blessed, and I'm out. Deuces.